Good to see everybody out this evening. We're glad that we're able to be here tonight and to study another part of God's Word. We're picking up in Acts chapter 17 this evening, and this is a continuation of Paul's second journey, and we certainly want to keep things going here. There's a lot of material here, and we'll do what we can with that tonight. Before we do that, let's take a look at the chapter titles. We got them all here on the one side. Church is established. 2. Stephen's arrest and death. All right. Jesus' ascension. 1. First persecutions. Conversion of Saul. 9. Okay. Eunuch.
8.
All right. Conversion of Cornelius. 10. Christians first in Antioch.
11.
Good. Jerusalem Conference.
15.
Okay. Paul's first journey.
15. 13. No, 13.
13 and 14. There you go. Death of Ananias and Sapphira. There you go. Persecutions of Judea.
14.
12. All right. Conversion of the jailer. 16. Paul's second journey. 16 and 17. Is that right? Is that why I did that? No. 17 and 18. Sorry. 17 and 18. While we're there, you might want to write down 19 and 20. That'll also be Paul's third journey. Chapters 19 and 20. And there they all are. Okay? Good. I think it's there's a lot of thoughts here. This is good. I'm glad you guys are working on that because it's amazing. And after this class is over and done, and we go a different direction, when somebody makes a reference to something in the book of Acts in a given chapter, guess what? You're already going to know what it's something about it anyway, and it'll be amazing how much of this will stick with you. And we're glad for that. I'm sorry? 17 and 18 should have been second journey, yeah, 17 and 18. Just to make sure I had it written down right. Third journey is going to be 19 and 20. John, you use secretary, buddy. All right. Not a problem. All right, so we pick up at chapter 17 this morning. Interesting part, I want to take a look at it. Verse 1 of chapter 17. Who did we leave in Philippi at this time as we close chapter 16? Luke. All right, Luke stayed there. All right. Now, why I'm telling you this, there's going to be a lot of things happen here in chapter 17 and 18, and it's difficult to put the pieces together out of the text of Acts 17 and 18. We're going to need some help in seeing some things and doing that, and I'm going to do that. I'm going to show that to you, okay? But we got to keep up with some people moving around, some things that's going on. Now, as we get to Thessalonica, and we get into that, let's take a look at verse 1. And when they had entered, or when they traveled through Amphipolis, Apollonia, they came to Thessalonica, where there was a synagogue of the Jews. I want to show you something here that's interesting, because as you take a look at where they are at Philippi, the first verse talks about then they moved to Amphipolis. Now, Amphipolis, you think, okay, on the map, that's no big deal, except that's 33 miles. Okay? On down to Apollonia, that's another 28 miles. Okay? And then on over to Thessalonica to the west, that's another 40 miles. Now, when you look at the map, you don't come away thinking that's the kind of distances that are involved. So all at once you got 100 miles here, give or take, between Thessalonica and Philippi. Now, why is that important? I'm sorry? Well, yeah, and part of his help, part of the people who are traveling with him are going to be staying as he continues to move. So it's not like they're around the corner. It's not like I can send you a quick telex and say, or a fax, and hey, come on down here. That it all happens, but there's time involved. Lots of time involved. And particularly in Thessalonica, we're going to see some things start to happen that's really going to bother Paul a lot. You guys ever heard of a book called Thessalonians? First and second? Guess what? They're written because of what's fixing to take place and what we're fixing to see. Okay? This kind of stuff starts weighing on Paul. We're going to see what's going on, the pressure and the things that happen here, not so much as far as he is concerned. He is concerned about the people that he's leaving. Okay? And he's concerned about what's going to happen. If they're going to give him this kind of hassle and this kind of pain, what's it going to be like when he's gone? And that's what he's worried about. The condition of these churches and the condition of these situations as he leaves isn't going to change. It isn't going to go away. And these are new Christians. These are people that are just learning how to get their feet on the ground as far as Christianity is concerned. And he's worried about what's going to happen to them. And so we'll see this as it takes place and as things happen here. So he's at Thessalonica. And in verse 2, according to what he normally did, he went into the synagogue, and there he taught with them for 3 Sabbaths, 3 weeks. 3 weeks he's in Thessalonica, okay? And so he's got things going on with them, and it's good, explaining and giving evidence that the Christ had to suffer and raise again from the dead, saying, "This is Jesus whom I am proclaiming to you, is the Christ." Now, what's different about that message than what we've been normally thinking? Up until this point, what's been a lot of the part of the message of what he has presented?
Christ as the Messiah.
And who killed him?
The Jews.
You see my point? You mean he makes that point to them and lets them understand that they're responsible for the death of Jesus. But now as he gets further and further away from Jerusalem, it's less and less impactful and necessary to say, because you've got fewer and fewer Jews out there that this affects, and so the audience is predominantly made up of Gentiles at this point, and so that's got little to no meaning to them. The big important thing, as it is now, is that Jesus was the Christ. Jesus came, Jesus lived, Jesus died, he rose from the grave. And that's what's important. This is to get your feet on the ground and get you to understand he died for the forgiveness of your sins, our sins. Okay? And that's as you see the message as it kind of shifts a little bit as he moves further and further. And some of them were persuaded and joined Paul and Silas along with a great multitude of the God-fearing Greeks and a number of the leading women. Mixed response. Normal. Some accept it, some don't. Same as today, right? Say, no different, okay? Same things going on. But also, with that in mind, you've got the same type of response and the same type of problems that it creates. Verse 5, "But the Jews, becoming jealous and taking along with them some wicked men from the marketplace, formed a mob and set the city in an uproar. Coming to the house of Jason, they were seeking to bring him out to the people. And when they did not find them," that being Paul and Silas, "they began dragging Jason and his brethren before the city authorities, shouting, 'These men who have upset the world have come here also.' And Jason has welcomed them, and they all act contrary to the decrees of Caesar, saying that there is another king, Jesus. And they stirred up the crowd and the city authorities who heard these things, and when they had received a pledge from Jason and the others, they released them." Stirring up the city, stirring up the problems with what's going on. I mean, it's not altering what's being said. I mean, Jesus is the Son of God. Jesus came and died, and that's going to rub people the wrong way, particularly if you're, in this case, the Jews who are there, and they stir things up and create an issue. Now, the problem is with Jason. Tell me something about it. Who's Jason and what's the deal? He's what?
He's related to Paul.
Really?
And Romans.
Really? you find that out?
I was studying.
Huh?
I was studying.
Did you Google it?
Romans 16.
Huh?
Romans 16:21.
Wow, you just may have thrown a curveball here. Hold on. What are you laughing at? Romans 16, what, 21? I did get into that a little further. I don't know. That's the first time I've hooked it up that direction, but it does say kinsman. But I don't, kinsman may be throwing us off too. Because Luke was, I'm sorry? Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. That's what I'm thinking. I think kinsman is flipped around there for fellow worker. And that would make sense. I will notate that and do some more digging.
But he does stay with him.
Oh, yeah, no question. Well, yeah, he does. And also he hides them. They are hidden. They look for him, they couldn't find him. And so, yes, that part of it he's guilty of. And the simple matter is, in other words, he made his bail, and that's the pledge they take from him. When they in verse number 9, he makes his bail, he's released, and then things begin to happen as a result of that, as far as Paul is concerned. Yeah.
What type of security would they have given that? Extra money or what?
Yeah. It's the same thing we call bail. He made his bail, that kind of thing. But yeah, that's what he paid him off, paid what it was, and he was able to go. But as a result of that, and yet still that same night, we see in verse 10 then that the brethren immediately sent Paul and Silas away by night to Berea, and when they arrived there, they went into the synagogue of the Jews, verse 10. So again, he's staying one step ahead of the problems and what's taking place, and Jason is the one that takes the heat for it, and that's okay. I mean, Jason's fine with that, But Paul's able to make good his escape out of Thessalonica and goes on to Berea. Then after that, so we see Berea over here, and again that's another 50 miles. It doesn't look like it on the map, but that's 50 miles from Thessalonica on over. So he's, it's another big chunk of miles that he has to think about, and things that begin to happen. So he gets to Berea. What's interesting about the folks in Berea? Now, before you answer that, let me go back one step. We got now churches where? Philippi. Now we got them at Thessalonica. All right, we've got people who've accepted that. We've got things going on in Thessalonica. Now, we've got folks in Berea. And the Bereans are what?
Study the scripture.
Yeah. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. In fact, that's an attribute we all ought to think about. Just because I'm standing here talking don't mean I'm perfect. Don't mean I've got it completely 100% together. So, that's the idea. And particularly when you're looking at situations, we're going into the synagogue of the Jews, and he's talking about history and background and so forth, they're going to know that. They're going to know that. And they're just checking, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Go ahead.
I was just going to say the key thing about that also I like is like not only were they reading the scriptures, but they were comparing what he said to the scriptures.
Sure.
Key thing.
And what is the result of that? When you hear it and you read it and you see it and you then understand what? Paul's being straight up about this, huh? He's telling us the right of it.
Understand you're preaching the truth that way.
And there you go. That's right. And that's exactly what it's. The other side of it too is if it doesn't match, something's wrong.
Which this would have been the old law, I guess, is it says scripture.
Yeah. Right. That's what they're talking about. And again, the response is good, mixed. In verse 12, many of them therefore believed, along with a number of the prominent Greek women and men. And so we've got a mixed response with what's going on, at that point as well. So, in getting to Berea, then the people are more noble than those of Thessalonica, but again, there's a mixed result. And again, who's at the bottom of it?
The Jews.
Yeah, Would you walk 50 miles to stir up trouble? They did. That's exactly what they did. Verse 13, and when the Jews of Thessalonica found out that the word of God had been proclaimed by Paul and Berea, in Berea also they came there likewise, agitating and stirring up the crowds. And then immediately the brethren sent Paul out to go as far as the sea, and Silas and Timothy remained there. Now those who conducted Paul brought him as far as Athens, and received a command for Silas and Timothy to come to him as soon as possible, and they departed. We'll touch on that just in a minute, okay? But we see what's going on. The problem stirs up again, and rather than Paul being caught in the middle of it, they move him out by night to Athens. And we'll talk about that. Please note some interesting things here. Who is left in Berea?
Timothy.
Barnabas and
I'm sorry?
Barnabas and help me remember that.
You wouldn't be thinking of Silas, would you? Silas? Yeah. Okay, Silas and Timothy.
Why didn't the Jews, walk in? They
Don't know they didn't. Luke just did. Yeah, we don't know they didn't, but Luke just doesn't say one way or two. I mean, the heat's still on. Just because Paul leaves doesn't mean this goes away. Okay? The heat's still there. It is interesting. In Luke's narrative, and if you go through this and go back to Philippi, we don't see Luke including Timothy in the list of people who are traveling. And that's okay. I mean, it's all right. But all at once he shows up at Berea because Paul leaves him there. Okay? That's all right. What I want you to understand in that, Timothy is kind of the other letters to the Thessalonians and other, Timothy's going to end up being a bit of a courier with taking information, taking letters from Paul to them back and forth. Like I say, this is going to be, when he gets to Athens, this is now the third group that he has touched base with, Philippi, Thessalonica, Berea. Two of the three haven't had good outcomes. The third one had a miraculous jailbreak. Okay, remember that. And so now he's got a lot in his mind. He's got all these new folks at Philippi and Thessalonica and Berea weighing on him. It's a problem, okay? We're going to see it's a problem, and we'll illustrate that and we'll show that. We may not get to it tonight, but we'll see. But at Corinth, this is a problem. This is a weight. This is a concern for him. Go ahead, Billy. I'm sorry.
That's okay. With Paul and Timothy and Silas, it seems like, just like within the days of Jesus, that these people had a mindset, if we can stop Christ, then we stop this because he's the main leader of it.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like this is sort of the way the Jews was with Paul and his fellow workers, that if they could eventually silence Paul, then everybody else would disperse and just go away.
Go away.
You know, they proved that, you know, just like back in the book of Acts, or back a few chapters when they said, the priest stood up to them and said, look, you know, if this word be of God, we can't stop it. Here was this fella out in the wilderness. He dies and everybody just dispersed. So they demonstrated twice that if you can destroy the head of something, or at least what they thought was the head, then the rest of them would disperse, and that'd be the end of it. And I think that's why that they would go after Paul every time, because they looked at Paul as being actually the head of Timothy and Silas.
And if you remember when he was, I can't remember which city at the time, at the minute, but when they tried to make him a god,
Yeah.
they gave him the and I can't remember, whichever the two, you said Zeus and somebody else.
Zeus
Yeah.
and Venus,
And it was because the name meant spokesman.
Jupiter.
Yeah, it was the name meant, so it seemed like he was, like you're talking about, the one in the forefront doing the speaking. So that's very much a possibility. So he gets, they get him there, and they see what's going on, and immediately the brethren from Paul sent Paul out to go as far as by sea, and Silas and Timothy remained there. So they're still in Berea, and again, just looking at what takes place as he gets on toward Athens. Athens is a city not exactly on the coast itself. It's on the Aegean Sea. Its seaport city is Piraeus, P-I-R-A-E-U-S, and that connects the two cities by about 2 miles. Okay, there's a 2-mile street that goes from one to the other. Where Paul sees all the images and all the things that are so stirring to him is on that 2-mile walk. Roman historians record that it was easier to find an idol in Athens than it was a man. There was that many of them. Okay, and so you see the potential, or Paul sees the potential of what he needs to deal with here. But in the course of all of that, as soon as he gets there and he sees what's going on, he immediately sends word back by the fellows that brought him down to Athens to go back and tell Silas and Timothy to come on down. I need you down here. Okay? And so that's exactly what takes place. Now again, please understand that trip from Berea down, you're talking probably 200, 300 miles by boat by the time you come around and come back up to the port city. It wasn't going to be a 5-minute trip. It wasn't going to both taking and sending the guys back and Timothy and Silas coming down. It wasn't going to be today or tomorrow. It'll be maybe, depending on the availability of transportation, ships and so forth, it could be a number of weeks before this happens. Okay? And so in the meantime, Paul is stirred with what takes place here. And let's take a look at that just a minute, because there's a couple of situations here that take place as he gets there. Athens as Jerusalem was noted for the center of religious activity relative to the Jewish nation and that type of thing, Athens is noted in this part of the world as a center for human philosophy, and very much exalted that whole line of thinking. Okay, and so that's what he has to deal with when he gets there. When Paul sees what's going on, he can't contain himself, because basically the whole city's given over to idolatry. And as he then starts to make conversation and talking with what's going on, he starts to present to them and talk to them about the God, the unknown God, as far as their idol was concerned. They had one set up that in case we miss one, we're going to sit one up to the unknown God. Okay, and that's what they do. So as he makes this entry into Athens, verse 16, and while Paul was waiting for them at Athens, his spirit was being provoked within him as he was beholding the city full of idols. So he was reasoning in the synagogue with the Jews and God-fearing Gentiles, and in the marketplace every day with those who happened to be present. And also some of the Epicureans and Stoic philosophers were conversing with him, and some were saying, what would this idle babbler wish to say? And others, he seems to be proclaiming a strange deities, because he's preaching Jesus and the resurrection. The two particular groups that Paul locks horns with here are called the Epicureans and the Stoics. These are two groups of philosophers, if you will. The Epicureans basically looked at life from the standpoint of pure humanistic beliefs. Get all you can get now, because when you're dead all over, and life's been good, and you need to enjoy what you got while you can, because that's going to be the end of it. The Stoics were a little different in their philosophies, in that they felt. Now hold on a second. I got it here on the slide. I just got to get it something.
Whatever happened was going to be fine. It's going to be fine if they accepted it, whether it was pleasure or pain.
There you go. That's exactly what I got here. Good, thank you. The idea was that if it's good, it's good. If it's bad, it's bad, and it don't make any difference. It doesn't make any difference.
Nothing you can do about it.
Nothing you can do about it. It's just the way it is. But when you're dead, you're done. And it's over. Throw a little dirt on it and forget it.
The Epicurean, they say, was only devoted to pleasure.
Yep. It's totally what their thoughts process. So now, with that thought process, try to introduce the idea of God. A creator, a being. He's given us the world that we have. You're here because God said you could be. By the way, we are too. Okay? And then try to throw that into the mix of that thought process. And it's basically going to be like hitting a wall. It ain't going to work. And that's pretty much what happens here. Because he makes the presentation to them. And of course, you see the response. In one particular case, there in verse 18, idle babbler. It's like, what are you talking about? Kind of thing. And they took him then in verse 19 to the Areopagus. Now, unless you did a little reading and understand what this is talking about, in Athens, there's the hill, a big hill. It's like 350 to 500 feet taller than the rest of the city. And that's where this big stadium, building, whatever you want to call it, is located. And that's where these kinds of debates and where these kinds of things were talked about. And that's where they take him.
Is that where the Acropolis is?
Mm-hmm.
It is.
Yep. And of course they ask the question, may we know more of this new teaching which you are proclaiming, for you are bringing some strange things to our ears which we want to know, therefore what these things mean. And all the Athenians and strangers visiting used and spent their time in nothing more than telling and hearing some new thing. It sounds almost like some stuff we hear today. So this is what he's up against, and this is what it is that he is to present. And so he does. I mean, you have to understand, Paul takes advantage of any opportunity that he does. And again, tells us something, okay? The deck's stacked against you, okay? But you still have the opportunity to make a prayer. We can do the same time. It doesn't make any difference, the result. What makes the difference is did we take advantage of the opportunity to do it? And that's the occasion here that Paul has. Verse 22, Paul begins the sermon, begins the information to them. And please look at where he starts it. As he stands up in the midst of the Areopagus, he says, Men of Athens, I observe that you are very religious in all respects. For while I was passing through and examining the objects of your worship, I also found an altar with this inscription, To the unknown God. What therefore you worship in ignorance, this I proclaim to you. That God who made the world and all things in it, since he is the Lord of heaven and earth, does not dwell in temples made with hands, neither is he served by human hands as though he needed anything, since he himself gives to all life and breath and all things. And he made from one every nation of mankind to live on all the face of the earth, having determined their appointed times and boundaries of their habitation, that they should seek God, and perhaps they might grope for him and find him, though he is not far from each and every one of us. For in him we live and move and exist. Some of our own poets have said, for we also are his offspring. Being then the offspring of God, we ought not to think that the divine nature is like gold or silver or stone, an image formed by the art and thought of man. Therefore, having overlooked the times of ignorance, God is now declaring to men that all everywhere should repent, because God has fixed a day in which he will judge the world in righteousness through a man whom he has appointed, having furnished proof to all men by raising him from the dead. And when they heard this resurrection of the dead, some began to sneer. Others said, We shall hear you again on this concerning this. So Paul went out of their midst. But some men joined him and believed, among whom was Diogenes the Areopagite, and a woman named Damaris, and others with them. An interesting presentation. Can you see how it fits? Can you see why he says things the way he says them? Would this presentation make any sense to those in Thessalonica? No, none. It would have been Greek to them, as far as trying to understand where he's going with this. But he's got 2 miles of idols here that he's just walked through. And he's he's reflecting on that from the standpoint and not being any kind of, well, can't believe you're worshiping all these idols. What's up with that? That's not his approach. In other words, he understands, first of all, they are worshiping something. Okay? So therefore, we need to figure out how to turn that in such a way to worship God the right way. And so there's an interesting way that he presents this so that he can get the right thing said to him. Whether or not it sticks, we can't say that it don't. We can't say that it don't, because the verse talks about, verse 34, and some men joined him and believed, among whom were Diosthenes the Areopagite and a woman named Damaris and others. We don't know from that point on if there was a church established in Athens or not. And if it did it survive? We don't know. Luke doesn't share that with us. It would indicate, or it seems to indicate in the way Luke normally does things, that it may have started out but didn't last long, or if it even started out, really, because of the intense surroundings. We just don't know. But it doesn't seem like it was too successful in what takes place as he makes that presentation there. So I guess if we had to take a look and answer the question, what was the result? Flip it in the air. It could go either way. It could go yes or no. And again, I think we'd have to say it's mixed one way or two. Okay, go ahead.
The interesting thing is, like, he comes into this city, I wonder which is the hardest. You got the Jews who believe in God, but they're not accepting Jesus Christ, and then you got the Gentiles who don't even accept God, I guess. So you're having to do a twofold with them, really, aren't you?
Yeah, you've got, and again, you have to be amazed and understand how Paul's equipped to go either direction, to go with either way he's approached, he's able to deal with it. And if you want to get philosophical, I can do that. I can do that. I know that history, and I can do that. Okay, but if you're talking about it from the standpoint of the Gentiles and where they're coming from with the idol worship and the things that they brought to the table, I can deal with that too, and we can talk about that. So he was an incredible orator in being able to, do that. Now, I'm not in any way saying that God's not giving him the words to say, okay? Because I'm not trying to take that out of it all. But Paul's an incredible tool that God's using. Go ahead, Bill.
Well, just like when he goes to Athens, he sees that one version will say superstition like mine, but others will say religious. These people had a belief because you could tell, and by their hats that they had and all these statues as he wandered around there looking at them, they all believed in a God. So Paul comes to the fact of the unknown God, and then he declares to them that this unknown God you're worshiping ignorantly. Now, how would you know that they were worshiping him ignorantly? Well, the fact of it is, if you don't know God, then you certainly wouldn't understand how to worship him. So this is what Paul is doing to them. He's taking a religious people that believe in something, and saying, here now, the God that you're trying to worship that you don't know nothing about, let me show you the true way of worshiping this God.
Yeah, because he phrases it like that in 23, to the unknown God.
Yeah.
Therefore, that you worship in ignorance, this I proclaim to you.
Yeah. So he's saying, I want to show you because you've done stated yourself that you don't know him. So I want to introduce him to you.
Right.
And so he demonstrates the true God, in whom you have your being, your movement, and even one of your poets has declared that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's where he wins at least some of these people.
Yep. And the response to that, is it any different than before? Some people took it, most people didn't. That type of thing, or that's what the impression that we're left with. And yet, that's not much different, if any kind of different, than what Paul's experienced in some of these other locations. And it's no different than what we get into today. You talk to folks, Some of them's going to say, okay, let's talk about this more. Others are going to say, nah, we can't go that route, and just stop it right there. So it's not different than what we can know today. Any thoughts on chapter 17? We're going to break it right there for a minute because I want to do the questions on chapter 17. Chapter 18 is in pretty intense. So let's do the questions on 17.
Hey Roger,
Yeah.
there is one thing.
What's that?
I would like to say, even though it is like they, the ones that don't believe and don't get baptized in
Mhm.
one day, that's all, that's all.
That's right. And it's not like they don't have opportunity.
That's right.
That's right. So they have the opportunity to do that. Okay. All right. Question 1. What cities did Paul and Silas pass through on their way to Thessalonica?
Syphilis and Apollonia.
Good job. I'm not going to do it. I already said them once. I'm not going to do them twice. All right. What believer at Thessalonica is identified by name? Okay. How did the persecutors in Thessalonica describe the effects of the apostles' preaching?
They turned the world upside down.
And of course, they're trying to put the Roman curve on the end of it, saying that this violates anything relative to Caesar and like that too. So they were trying to get the most mileage out of it. Where did Paul address the Athenians? Mars Hill. Okay. What altar in Athens did Paul mention? The unknown God. Okay. Is the Godhead properly represented in gold, silver, and stone?
No.
Absolutely not. Okay. What did God command all men to do? Repent. Okay. Meaning questions. Why were the Bereans considered more noble than those in Thessalonica?
They received the readiness to work.
There you go. They searched the scriptures. Okay. Well, this will be good. Identify the following terms used in the chapter. Idolatry.
Worship of idols, false gods.
Okay. Ignorant, yeah. Verse 30 talks about them doing it ignorantly too. That's a good point. Epicureans.
Devoted to the pursuit of pleasure.
I know where you got that a minute ago. I forgot about this being there. That's good. All right. Stoics, go ahead.
Calm acceptance of anything that happens.
All right.
Good or bad.
All right. Good. Areopagus.
It's the highest meeting place in Athens.
All right. Same thing as Mars Hill, right? It's the same one. Highest court, highest spot for their devotions.
It's daily prayers.
Okay. Objects of worship too. Yeah, the devotion. But I think in the idea that they're talking about here is too. It's relative to the idols and to the things that they were worshiping at too.
They still have idolatry today.
Sure. It hasn't changed. Hasn't stopped. You bet. We did the map on Amphipolis, Apollonia, Thessalonica, Berea, and Athens. If you need me to show you that again, I can. But I think we've got a good picture of where all that's at. Does God's law vary in different ways or places since the introduction of the gospel of Christ? No. It's the same thing. You bet. All right, chapter 17. I've got just a few minutes. We can take a look at just a little bit of, give some thought here to chapter 18. Because as he goes on to, then to Corinth, which is not much further over, but I forgot to write down the mileage there. I'll get that, and I'll have it for you guys Sunday. But he gets to Corinth, and he meets some folks in verse 2 of chapter 18. And we found a certain Jew named Aquila, a native of Pontus, having recently come from Italy, and his wife Priscilla, because of Claudius had commanded all the Jews to leave Rome, he came to them. And because he was of the same trade, he stayed with them, and they were working for by trade, they were tent makers. This is an interesting sidelight, I think, with Paul. You would think, and the way he does things, and in the way he is talking with people and working with congregations, and how would he have time, or why would he take time to make tents?
I'm down to make a living.
There you go. All right, and there's something to be said for that. I mean, he could have asked for, and of course the Philippians, if we turn over there and look at chapter, I think 3 or 4, talks about communicated to him all the time, and in the matter of giving and receiving, even when he was only less than 100 miles away from home, away from them. They were still doing that, okay? And so, obviously, there's a lot more miles involved in this right now. But I want us to understand that Paul didn't feel it was above getting his hands dirty. Okay? He wasn't above doing what he needed to do to make a living and work, and he wasn't above being able to talk to these folks. Now, the interesting thought to me, and Linda and I were talking about this, when he hooks up with Priscilla and Aquila at this moment in chapter 18, do you think they're Christians or not? Think about that. They've been told to leave Rome because the emperor says, get out, because you're a Jew. And so they did. We don't have a record of it, or at least I don't know of it, whether they were Christians at this point or not. Now, I can tell you, sitting around here making tents with these two, they heard something. Because Paul wasn't going to let that go, you know. And so eventually then they take the opportunity to help another individual understand more about the gospel, and they do that. Go ahead.
That's what I was going to say, they had to teach Paul, they had to know something about it.
Yes. And of course, they're going to be traveling some here with Paul. But please understand, and we'll see this as we get more into the study, this is one of the stopping points for Paul. He's going to be at Corinth 18 months.
So some of them
Okay.
Jews was converted then.
I'm sorry?
I said, so some of them Jews got converted.
Oh, yeah, sure. It's been happening all along. It's been a mixed, some did, some didn't. Some were aggravation, some were accepting, you know, that type of thing. But yeah, it's been going on. But in this particular case, and as we pick up at chapter 18, we're going to see some things here that's pretty special about this stop in Corinth and what takes place. So we'll stop there for tonight. We'll pick up with that on Sunday morning, and we'll go with it from there. Is there any thoughts now or questions? Corinth is a good stop. Do some reading there and see what you can come up with, because it's pretty good. Any questions? Any ideas? Good. I've either got it totally messed up or it's good. All right. Okay. All right, before we stop this evening, we certainly want to offer the opportunity for someone that might be with us tonight to obey the gospel and to become a child of His. Or if you've got things in your life that you need to help us, or that you need us to help you correct with prayer and that kind of thing, we'd certainly like to do that. So if we can help in some way this evening, we want to do that and offer that opportunity to you now as together we stand and as we sing.